The lone nut again. The lack of police investigation or media curiosity about the possibility that Kaczynski was a member of a larger conspiracy is striking. The Unabomb Manifesto alludes to others who assisted in the attacks. Montana's Great Falls Tribune newspaper reported April 12th on the presence of a man in Lincoln who declined to be identified or to say exactly where he was from, who called for Kaczynski to be considered innocent and said Kaczynski had been entrapped. In November 1994, members of the ecology group Earth First met at a conference at the University of Montana in Missoula, about 60 miles southwest of Kaczynski's residence in Lincoln. There is bus service between Lincoln and Missoula. The name T. Kaczynski, spelled with a C, a phonetic rendering of Kaczynski's name, appeared on the attendance list. 3 days after Kaczynski's arraignment, research computer data stored at a U.S. Forest Service office in Moscow, Idaho, was destroyed by an intruder who trashed offices and tossed computers. Was this retribution on the part of Kaczynski's associates for Forest Service agent Jerry Burns having lured Kaczynski out of his cabin, facilitating his capture? Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, Michael Hoffman. Hello and welcome to another edition of The Stench of Truth. I want to talk about the possible emergent swine flu epidemic, talk about some recent history, talk about some past history, and talk about some ominous signs. First of all, I want to point you back to 2005 in China. There was an outbreak of what was purported to be in the news avian flu or bird flu, which I might just say on the outfront that bird flu is considerably more fucking deadly than regular flu, okay? It can kill people much more efficiently just by itself than even the pandemic in 1918, which was H1N1. The avian flu is H5N1, I believe. And the difference between the two is that the H is the thing that morphs. So you have H1, H2, H3, H4, etc. Now, in 2005, there were a number of deaths in China that were called bird flu in the world press, but China persisted in denying that it was cases of bird flu, and instead stuck to the story that the people who died from a bacterial infection that came from, can you guess? Pigs! Okay, so a connection in 2005 between bird flu and swine. Okay, that's number one. Number two, in 1918, the vast majority of the people who died from the Great Flu pandemic were people who were young and healthy, people who had strong immune systems. And the reason that they died, the proximate cause of their death, was not the flu, even though they had the flu. It was a secondary bacterial infection, sometimes septicemia, sometimes pneumonia, or something of that sort, which ultimately was the cause of death. But the fact that they were infected with the flu caused their immune systems to go into overdrive and prevented them from being able to counter a secondary infection. So it's kind of odd that people with the better immune systems were the ones that succumbed so easily. And I believe that was because the immune system was so healthy that it had pulled all of its resources to efficiently handle the flu virus and thus was completely incapable of handling a secondary infection. Now, when it comes to the elderly, the infirm, or the young, because their immune systems are not so efficient, it wasn't so totally taken over by the flu virus that it would have been able to cope with secondary infections if they came along, or in fact would have staved off those secondary infections altogether. I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me when it comes to medical facts. Okay, I'm only bringing you some information that came my way. Now, interestingly enough, when you examine this in light of current technology and genetics and all these other things, a lot of people like to point to the fact that we've only recently done genetic experimentation, and a lot of times people want to discount the idea that a virus could be man-made, that it could be enhanced or changed by man in order to render it more effective against people and develop a true bioweapon. Now, the fact of the matter is that, and I was quite surprised by this, but this type of tampering with viruses and with cross-contamination between species goes back to the late 1800s and to, can you guess it, the Rothschilds, where a scientist who was financed by the Rothschilds did particular research where he cross-contaminated viruses with all sorts of animals, including chickens and pigs, once again combining birds and swine. Okay, so now we have today a curious mixture virus called a swine flu, which may turn out to be a pandemic, which may turn itself out to be merely a distraction from something even more fucking horrific waiting around the fucking corner.